They ignored my vows, then they saw my fiancé, the promoter. Suddenly they wanted a reunion. My name is Alexandra Morgan, Lieutenant Alexandra Morgan of the United States Navy, to be precise. At 28 years old, I'm one of the few female officers commanding an aquatic special operations unit in San Diego. It's not a position I earned easily, but I've always been the type to face impossible challenges with a stubborn smile. The ocean has always been my home more than any other place. I grew up in a small coastal town in Maine where my father, a former Marine, ran a small shipyard. He taught me to sail before I could even ride a bike. My mother, a doctor at the local hospital, taught me that serving others was the noblest way to live. I think it was inevitable that I would end up in the Navy. But this story isn't about my military career, though that's important to understanding what happened. This story is about how my professional and personal worlds collided in a way I never could have predicted, and how it nearly ruined what should have been the happiest day of my life. I met Michael during a joint Navy Department of Justice operation 3 years ago. He was a brilliant federal prosecutor specializing in international maritime crime. Our first conversation took place while we were both looking at a map of the Gulf of Mexico, discussing smuggling routes. There was something about his analytical method, the way he saw patterns where others saw only random lines, that immediately fascinated. Michael wasn't intimidated by my uniform or my rank, a rarity even in the most progressive circles. He treated me as an equal, respected my expertise, and always asked my opinion on tactical matters. Our relationship began professionally, evolved into friendship, and eventually into something much deeper. 2 years after that first meeting, he proposed during a sunrise on Coronado Beach, near the base where I was stationed. It was perfect in its simplicity, just the two of us, the ocean, and a promise. We decided our wedding would be small. We both had careers that demanded discretion. Michael had prosecuted some of the worst international criminal drug cartels, human traffickers, modern-day pirate sand. I ran operations that rarely appeared in official reports. Privacy wasn't just a preference, it was a necessity. We planned to get married in the backyard of my mother's childhood home in Maine, with just immediate family and a few close friends. Everything was perfect until 2 weeks before the ceremony, when I received an unexpected call from my commanding officer. Lieutenant Morgan, Captain Reynolds' voice sounded formal over the phone. "We need to talk about your leave." My stomach sank. I'd requested 2 weeks off for the wedding and honeymoon months ago, and everything had been approved. "Is there a problem, sir?" "A situation has arisen that requires your specific expertise. We are canceling all non-essential licenses." "With all due respect, sir, my wedding is in 10 days. There was a long pause. "I understand, Lieutenant, but this is a matter of national security. Operation Poseidon. Full briefing tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Operation Poseidon." I knew the code name. It was a mission to track a new arms trafficking route in the Pacific that had been in the planning stages for months. My team had gathered preliminary intelligence, but nothing indicated such a dramatic acceleration in the timeline. "For how long, sir?" "Undetermined. At least 3 weeks. 3 weeks. My wedding was in 10 days. "Sir, I have already confirmed all the arrangements. Guests are traveling from all over the country." "I'm sorry, Morgan." "Direct orders from Admiral Davis." Admiral Davis. That name made my blood run cold. Rear Admiral William Davis was known for his ruthless efficiency and complete disregard for personal matters. He was also known for his particular dislike of women in command positions. Our paths had crossed several times, and on each occasion, he made it clear that he considered my promotion a mistake. "Can you tell me why I'm specifically being requested?" "I have 2 highly qualified lieutenants who could lead this operation. I am not authorized to discuss details over the phone. Tomorrow, 0600. The call ended before I could protest further. I stared at my phone, feeling a mixture of shock and anger rising inside me. It wasn't a coincidence. Admiral Davis knew about my marriage. This was deliberate. Michael arrived home an hour later to find me surrounded by wedding planning papers, a half-empty glass of whiskey besides me, something I rarely did. "Something tells me we're not picking out floral arrangements," he commented softly, setting his briefcase on the floor. I told him about the call, about Operation Poseidon being suddenly accelerated, about the suspicion that Admiral Davis was deliberately sabotaging our marriage. Michael listened without interrupting, his face taking on that concentrated expression I knew so well, the same one he wore when analyzing a particularly complex case. "Are you sure this is personal?" he asked finally. "Absolutely. Davis has been blocking my career ever since I got promoted. He tried to transfer me to an administrative position last year, remember? And now, suddenly, an operation that was initially planned has to happen the week of our wedding, and it specifically requires my presence." Michael nodded slowly. "Have you checked to see if other officers have had their licenses revoked?" "I'll make some calls," I replied, impressed as always by his methodical approach. That was why he was so good in court. He never jumped to conclusions without concrete evidence. 3 phone calls later, my suspicions were confirmed. No other officer had had their license revoked. Only me. "That's clear discrimination," Michael said when I reported my finding. "You could formally object and make it seem like I'm putting my marriage above duty." Davis would love that. He'd use it against me in every future evaluation. "So what do you want to do?" I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the impossible choice before me. "I'll go to the briefing tomorrow. I'll hear what they have to say. If it truly is a national security emergency, we'll have to postpone the wedding." "What if it isn't?" I looked at Michael, seeing the determination in his eyes that mirrored my own. "Then we fight." The briefing the next morning was exactly as I suspected. Operation Poseidon had been fast-tracked without any significant new intelligence to justify the urgency. Admiral Davis chaired the meeting, barely acknowledging my presence, except to emphasize the critical need for experienced leadership, as if my lieutenants hadn't undergone the same rigorous training as I had. When the presentation ended, I asked to speak privately with the Admiral. His assistant, Lieutenant Commander Hoffman, looked uncomfortable as he led us to a small conference room. "Sir, with all due respect, I see no operational justification for the cancellation of my previously approved leave," I began, keeping my voice firm and professional. Admiral Davis looked at me with that expression of mild disdain I knew so well. "Lieutenant Morgan, when you accepted your commission, you accepted that duty to the nation comes before personal commitment. If that's a problem for you, perhaps you should reconsider your career choice." "I'm not questioning my duty, sir. I'm questioning the specific need for my presence when I have 2 fully qualified lieutenants to lead this phase of the operation. Your team, your responsibility, Lieutenant. We don't delegate national security to accommodate parties." I felt my face heat up. "It's not a party, sir. It's my wedding, and I'm sure your fiancé will understand. After all, he serves in the government too, doesn't he?" There was something in his tone that made me pause. "Yes, sir. He's a federal prosecutor." Yes. Michael. Bennett. Department of Justice." Davis consulted a folder in front of him as if needing to verify information he clearly already knew. Interesting coincidence. Him being involved in the Blackwater case. Blackwater. The name meant nothing to me, but it clearly meant something to the Admiral. His face had changed subtly, a slight tightening around the eyes. "I'm not familiar with that case, sir." "No? Well, I suppose you keep your work and personal lives separate." "Very professional." He closed the folder. "Operation Poseidon begins in 3 days. You embark on the USS Roosevelt tomorrow for final preparations. Dismiss." I left the building, my mind racing. Whatever this Blackwater case was, it had some connection to Admiral Davis's hostility. I needed to talk to Michael. Michael was in court when I called, so I left a vague message asking him to meet me for lunch. 2 hours later, we were sitting in a small cafe a few blocks from the base, away from prying east. "Blackwater," Michael repeated, his face immediately serious. "Did he mention that specifically?" "Yes. I said it was an interesting coincidence that you were involved in the case." "What is Blackwater, Mike?" Michael looked around, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. "It's a corruption case I'm building. It involves defense contracts, bribes, possibly treason, and Admiral Davis is involved. I can't confirm who's under investigation, but the fact that he mentioned it to you, double quotes, thoughtfully, it's irregular, and potentially an attempt to obstruct justice. Do you think he's canceling my license to send you a message?" or to distract me, or to separate us during a critical phase of the investigation. Michael frowned. This changes everything, Alex. This isn't just about our marriage anymore. What should we do? First, you follow his orders. We can't give him any ammunition against you. And the wedding. Michael smiled. That smile that always gave me confidence. Even in the most difficult situations, leave it to me. Just be ready to say I do when the time comes. What are you planning? It's better if you don't know the details for now. Trust me? With my life? I replied without hesitation. We said goodbye with a quick kiss, and I watched Michael walk away, his determined posture reminding me why I fell in love with him. He didn't just accept my strength, he complemented it with his own. The next morning, I boarded the USS Roosevelt as ordered. The next 2 days were filled with intense preparations for the operation, though I still saw no real justification for the urgency or my indispensable presence. Each night, I exchanged encrypted messages with Michael, who assured me he was making progress without elaborating. The night before what was supposed to be our wedding, I received a different message. Plan in motion. Be ready tomorrow, 11 o'clock. Trust the process. I tried not to let my curiosity and anxiety get the better of me as I conducted the final team briefing the next morning. Operation Poseidon was scheduled to begin at 1500 hours, which meant that, wedding or not, I'd be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean when I should have been exchanging vows in Maine. At 10:30, I was called to the communications room. Priority message from Central Command, Lieutenant, the communications officer reported, looking confused. The message was short and to the point. Lieutenant Alexandra Morgan is summoned to a secure conference. Call at 1100 hours. Subject, National Security Review. Clearance, JSOC 7745 Alpha. JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. A level of authority far above Admiral Davis. Something big was happening. At 10:55, I entered the secure communications room. The main screen showed only the Department of Defense seal, awaiting connection. At exactly 11 o'clock, the screen split into panels showing several high-ranking figures, including the Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations. In the center panel was Michael, wearing his most formal courtroom suit. Lieutenant Morgan, the Secretary of the Navy, began. We regret to interrupt your operational preparation, but a matter of extreme urgency has arisen concerning Operation Poseidon and the conduct of Admiral William Davis. My heart raced, but I kept my expression. I understand, sir. Prosecutor Bennett will explain the situation. Michael nodded formally. Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Morgan, I have presented evidence to the Department of Defense showing that the acceleration of Operation Poseidon was ordered under false pretenses by Admiral Davis as part of an effort to obstruct an ongoing federal investigation into corruption in defense contracts. We have reason to believe that the specific revocation of your leave was a deliberate attempt to interfere with federal testimony. Federal testimony? I repeat, genuinely. One of the other officers, whom I recognized as the Navy's Judge Advocate General, intervened. Lieutenant, as the fiancé of the lead prosecutor in the Blackwater case, you qualify as a material witness. Admiral Davis apparently believed that separating the two of you during this critical phase of the investigation could jeopardize the case. It all began to make sense. Davis's hostility, the sudden urgency of the operation, the insistence on my specific presence. We understand that today would have been your wedding, the Secretary of the Navy continued, his expression softening slightly. And while national security is our priority, we also value the integrity of our processes and the well-being of our officers. Admiral Davis is being relieved of duty pending an investigation, and Operation Poseidon has been returned to its original schedule. What does this mean for my current unit, sir? It means, Lieutenant, that your license is reinstated, effective immediately. I looked at Michael on the screen, who maintained his professional expression, but his eyes told another story: pride, love, and a touch of triumph. There's one more thing, Lieutenant Morgan, said the Chief of Naval Operations. Given the extraordinary circumstances and recognizing the sacrifice you are prepared to make, we've arranged priority transport to take you to Maine today. A helicopter is waiting to transfer you to the mainland, where a Navy jet is ready. I felt tears welling up, but I maintained my composure. I thank you so much, sir. Consider this a small gesture of apology from the United States Navy, he replied. And congratulations on your wedding. The conference call ended, and I was momentarily alone in the room, trying to process what had just happened. Michael had not only saved our marriage but also exposed corruption at the highest level of the naval chain of command. 3 hours later, I was on a Navy jet flying to Maine, still wearing my uniform because there was no time to change. Michael had flown in earlier and would be waiting. Somehow, against all odds, our wedding would go ahead as planned. The jet landed at a small regional airport near my mother's house. When the door opened, I saw not only Michael waiting, but also my entire family and close friends, including several members of my unit who had somehow managed to get leave to be there. How? I asked Michael as I ran into his arms. Let's just say that when the Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations found out what Davis was doing, they were very interested in making things right, he replied with a smile. And transporting some of their sailors here was the least they could do. My mother approached, tears in her eyes. Come on, honey. We have a dress waiting for you and a ceremony to begin. 2 hours later, I was in my kindergarten wearing the wedding dress I thought I wouldn't wear, looking up at the man who had moved heaven and earth and apparently much of the U.S. military chain of command to ensure we could have this moment. You performed. A miracle, I whispered as we exchanged our vows. Michael smiled, that smile that promised we could face anything together. No, I just enforced the law, and maybe bent a few rules in the process. Tell me everything later. We have a whole life for this. And as the sun set over the Atlantic Ocean, so different from the Pacific where I should have been, I swore an oath not only to Michael, but to myself, that I would never again allow anyone to use my sense of duty against me, that I would serve my country with honor, but never at the expense of my integrity or happiness. Admiral Davis had made the classic mistake many enemies make. He underestimated his opponent and, more crucially, he underestimated the strength that comes when two determined people join forces. The wedding reception was in full swing when I received a discreet message from one of my sailors. Admiral Davis had been officially released, and a formal investigation was underway. The Blackwater case was expanding, with several high-profile arrests expected in the coming days. Should we toast Admiral Davis? Michael suggested wryly when I shared the news. Indeed, I replied, raising my glass. Let's toast to justice and to truth. To justice and truth, he agreed, clinking his glass to mine. The pillars of our marriage. As we danced under the Maine stars, surrounded by family and friends, I realized that this story, our story, was just beginning, and it would be a story worth telling. The days following the wedding were a whirlwind. What began as a simple case of an admiral abusing his authority to interfere in our marriage quickly escalated into one of the biggest military corruption scandals in decades. The Blackwater affair, as I learned, involved a complex web of inflated defense contracts, bribes to high-ranking officials, and even the sale of sensitive information to foreign interests. Admiral Davis wasn't just a participant, he was one of the key orchestrators. Michael had been building the case for months, meticulously connecting the dots. Operation Poseidon, ironically, was genuine in its stated purpose to track a new arms trafficking route in the Pacific, but Davis had manipulated its timeline to his own end. Our planned honeymoon to Hawaii was postponed out of necessity. Michael was at the center of the expanding investigation, and I was called back to Washington to testify about Davis's actions related to the revocation of my license. Do you regret it? I asked Michael one night, as we both worked late in our temporary D.C. apartment, stacks of documents scattered around us. He looked at me, confused. Regret what? Of having married a Navy officer. Of all that complication. Michael put down his pen and stood, coming around the desk to kneel beside me. Alex, it was precisely because of you, determined, upright, dedicated, that I fell in love. And it was because of your commitment to duty that we were able to expose Davis. If you had been the kind of person who abandoned your post at the first sign of trouble, we would never have discovered the extent of this corruption. I smiled, touching his face. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The best, he agreed. Now, let's finish this suspicious contract analysis so we can finally get some sleep. The hearings began a week later. Sitting before a congressional investigative panel, I recounted the story of my license revocation, Davis's insinuations about the Blackwater case, and everything I had witnessed. Michael presented his side separately, detailing the evidence he had gathered against Davis and his co-conspirators. The media dubbed the scandal Blackwater because seemingly every scandal in Washington had to have the suffix "gate." The headlines were sensational. Corrupt admiral tries to sabotage Navy officer's wedding to cover up crimes, love, duty, and betrayal. The romance that brought down a naval conspiracy. It was surreal to see our personal story intertwined with a national security case. Even more surreal were the looks we began to receive: admiration from strangers, resentment from some military colleague who felt we had tarnished the Navy's reputation, gratitude from others who had long suspected corruption in high places. "It's strange," I commented to Michael after a long day of depositions. 6 months ago, all I wanted was a peaceful marriage and a stable career. Now we're in the eye of a hurricane. Do you regret it?" he asked, mirroring my earlier question. I thought for a moment. "No, I don't regret it. If it exposes people who betrayed their oaths and harmed our country, then it's worth it. That's why I love you, Lieutenant Morgan Bennett." The name still felt new, a reminder of the bond we had forged amidst the chaos. We decided we would both add each other's surnames, a union of identities, just as our lives had been united. 2 months after our wedding, the Blackwater case resulted in the first convictions. 3 defense contractors, 2 high-ranking officials including Davis, and a civilian Pentagon employee were found guilty on various charges ranging from fraud to espionage. Sentences ranged from 15 years to life in prison. The day Davis was convicted, Michael and I watched the announcement on television in our apartment in San Diego, where I had returned to resume command of my "Justice served," Michael commented, turning off the TV. "I still can't believe he risked everything. His career, his freedom, just for money." "It wasn't just money, Alex. It was power, the feeling of being above the rules. It's what corrupts many people in positions of authority." I nodded thoughtfully. "You know what's ironic? If he hadn't revoked my license, if he'd just let me get married peacefully, you probably still could have built a case against him eventually, but it might have taken a lot longer. His license revocation was his undoing," Michael agreed. "The classic arrogant villain who causes his own downfall." I grabbed 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne we'd saved for a special occasion. "I think this deserves a celebration, don't you?" "Definitely." As we were pouring the champagne, my phone rang. It was Captain Reynolds, my immediate commanding officer. "Lieutenant Morgan Bennett," he replied formally. "Alexandra," he said, using my first name, a rare occurrence for him. "I just received notification from Central Command. You're being considered for promotion to lieutenant." "Commander." I almost dropped the phone. Promotions in the Navy were notoriously slow, and I didn't expect to be considered for at least another 2 years. "Sir, are you sure there isn't some mistake?" "No mistake. Your work on the Blackwater case and your exemplary service have caught the attention of the right people. The official list will be released next week, but I wanted to let you know in advance." "I don't know what to say, sir. Tell me you'll continue to be the same dedicated and upstanding officer you've always been. We need more people like you, Alexandra." After hanging up, I turned to Michael, still stunned. "What is it?" he asked, noticing my expression. "I'm being promoted, Lieutenant Commander." Michael's face broke into a radiant smile, and he hugged me, lifting me off the ground. "That's amazing, Alex. You absolutely deserve this." "It's surreal," I admitted as he set me back down. 4 months ago, I thought my career was in jeopardy because of Davis. Now I'm getting a promotion. "Life has a poetic sense of justice sometimes," Michael commented, handing me a glass of champagne. "To the Navy's newest lieutenant commander, and to the best husband and prosecutor a Navy officer could ask for," I replied, clinking my glass to his. As we drank, I reflected on the extraordinary had traveled. From a couple planning a quiet wedding to central figures in a national security case, our lives had taken turns we could never have predicted. But perhaps this was how the best stories always happened, not as planned, but as a result of choices made in moments of challenge, of refusing to be intimidated, of remaining true to one's principles, even when the cost seemed too high. A week later, my promotion was official, along with a new set of responsibilities. I was assigned to lead a special task force dedicated to examining potential corruption in naval operations, a role created specifically in response to the Blackwater scandal. There, sending a message, Michael commented when I read my new job description to him. They're showing that the Navy takes corruption seriously, or they're putting me where I can be closely watched, I replied, half joking, half serious. Or they're recognizing that you're exactly the kind of leader they need right now, someone who has proven they will put integrity above politics and convenient conformity. Perhaps he was right. The winds were changing in the military, with more emphasis being placed on accountability and transparency. The Blackwater affair had exposed vulnerabilities in the system that were now being actively addressed. For Michael, the case represented a significant advancement in his career as well. He was promoted to Chief Prosecutor of the newly formed Defense Integrity Division at the Department of Justice, essentially becoming the civilian counterpart to my new role. It seems we're destined to continue working together, even if across different departments, I observed when he shared the news. The perfect combination, he agreed. You catch the criminals, I'll prosecute them, and we meet at home for dinner, exactly as it should be. Our honeymoon, when it finally happened 6 months after the wedding, was very different from what we had originally planned. Instead of Hawaii, we chose a small, secluded cabin in the Rocky Mountains. No media, no phones, just the two of us, nature, and the silence we had longed for. On the last night of our week of isolation, we sat in front of the fireplace, wine glasses in hand, staring into the flame. Do you think our life will ever be normal? I asked, my head resting on Michael's shoulder. He considered the question for a moment. Define normal. You know, predictable, peaceful. No national conspiracies or corrupt admirals trying to sabotage our wedding. Michael laughed softly. Maybe not, but I think normal is overrated. I prefer interesting. Interesting certainly describes the last few months, and I have a feeling our lives will continue to be interesting, Lieutenant Commander. You're not the type to settle for the ordinary, and frankly, neither am I. I lifted my head to look into his eyes. Promise? I promise. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, and it will be extraordinary. We sealed the promise with a kiss, knowing that our careers, our passions, and our commitment to justice would ensure that life would never be dull. And somehow, after everything we'd endured, I couldn't imagine a more perfect future. 6 months had passed since our belated honeymoon, and interesting certainly continued to describe our lives. My task force was unearthing more corruption cases than anyone had anticipated, and Michael was busy turning our discoveries into solid cases that resulted in convictions. We were making a difference, that was undeniable, but the work was also taking its toll. Long hours, frequent travel, and the constant stress of facing powerful people who didn't want to be exposed. You look exhausted, Michael commented one night when we finally managed to have dinner together at home for the first time in 2. I'm fine, I replied automatically, a reflex developed over years in the Navy, where admitting weakness was never an option. Michael knew me too well to accept that answer. Alex, you haven't slept properly in days. This isn't sustainable. I sighed, putting down my fork. It's a big case, Mike. Maybe. Bigger than Blackwater. If we're right about this, it'll go all the way to Congress. Michael's eyes widened. Congressmen involved in fraudulent contracts? I can't discuss the details yet, but yes. Potentially several members of the Armed Services Committee. My God. Michael was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Do you have adequate protection? The question caught me off guard. Protection? It's an internal investigation, not a field operation. Alex, if you're investigating members of Congress for corruption, you're messing with people who have a lot of power and a lot to lose. People like that are dangerous. I'm being careful, I assured him. Everything is following proper protocols. Michael didn't seem entirely convinced, but he let the subject drop. We finished dinner discussing lighter things, plans to visit my parents the following month, his upcoming birthday, the possibility of finally adopting a dog. It was 2 weeks later that the first threats began to arrive. Subtle, at first, intimations in official emails that my task force was overstepping its mandate, suggestions that perhaps I should be reassigned to a more appropriate role. Then came the calls to my direct supervisor, questioning my competence, my stability, even my loyalty. Comments were leaked to military reporters suggesting I was using my position to advance Michael's career. It's the same strategy Davis tried, I commented to Michael when yet another negative article appeared on an advocacy blog. Discredit the messenger when they can't refute the message. The difference is that this time you have the support of high command, Michael reminded. They know exactly what's going on. He was right. After the Blackwater scandal, naval leadership had implemented significant changes. My new supervisor, Admiral Hernandez, was a staunch reformer who fully supported my task force's work. When attempts at administrative intimidation failed, those under investigation resorted to more personal tactics. One afternoon, I received a call from Michael while I was in the middle of a staff meeting. His tone immediately alerted me that something was wrong. What happened? I asked as I walked away to a private corner. I just had an interesting visitor, he said, his voice controlled in a way I recognized from his courtroom days, a deliberate calm that hid fury. Senator James Morrison. The name made my stomach turn. Morrison was the chairman of the subcommittee at the center of our current investigation, a man we suspected of steering millions in contracts to companies in which his family had financial interests. What did he want? Officially? To discuss a legislative initiative related to military justice reform. Michael paused. Unofficially? To warn me that my wife is treading on dangerous ground and that it would be a shame if her promising career were cut short by unfounded accusation. Did he really threaten me through you? He was careful with his words, but the message was clear. That's obstruction of justice, I said, anger rising inside me. Yes, but it would be our word against him. He's too smart to leave evidence. I closed my eyes for a moment. Concentrate. I'm not backing down, Mike, I know. And I'm not suggesting you should. His voice softened. I just want you to be extremely cautious. These people are desperate. I'll speak to Admiral Hernandez. Bring her up to speed. Good idea. In the meantime, I'll see if we can get you some kind of protection, Michael. I don't need Alex. He rarely interrupted me, but when he did, I knew I had to listen. This isn't just about principles or doing the job right anymore. It's about physical safety. Promise me you won't compromise on that. Something in his tone made me pause. Do you know something you're not telling me? There was a moment of silence. I received information from a colleague at the FBI. They intercepted some troubling communications between Morrison Associates. Nothing specific enough to warrant action, but enough to warrant caution. I understand, I replied, suddenly acutely aware of the vulnerability of my position. I will take all necessary precaution. Admiral Hernandez took the threats seriously. Within a day, a naval security officer was assigned to accompany me during work hours, and additional security measures were implemented in our apartment. The investigation continued to advance despite mounting pressure. We uncovered a complex network of shell companies, inflated contracts, and bribes subtly disguised as consulting fees. The case was becoming stronger by the day, and we knew we were close to having enough evidence to move forward with formal charges. It was at this crucial point that I received an anonymous email to my personal account, something that should have been impossible given the security protocols we had implemented. The subject line simply read, "You two should go on a date." The body of the email contained only a link to an obscure news site. When I clicked it, my blood ran cold. It was an investigative report alleging that Michael was having an affair with an assistant district attorney in his office. The article included grainy photos of them leaving a restaurant together, their heads close together in conversation, looking intimate. I recognized the assistant immediately, Sophia Reyes, a brilliant young lawyer who worked on Michael's team. I also recognized the restaurant. It was where Michael often held work meetings. The photo didn't show anything inappropriate, but the context and innuendo were. I was staring at the screen when Michael came home. He noticed my expression immediately. What? I turned my laptop around for him to see. Michael read it quickly, his face hardening. "This is ridiculous," he said finally. "Sophia is part of the team working on the Morrison case. We were discussing prosecution strategy." No, I replied calmly. I didn't believe that for a second. The relief on his face was momentary, soon replaced by concern. How did this get into your personal email? Exactly the question I'm asking myself. I pointed to the email header. No identifiable sender, routed through anonymous servers. Someone with significant technical skills. Michael sat down beside me, his expression grave. "This is escalation, Alex. They're trying to separate us. create distrust between us. Well, they don't know our relationship very well, do they? I tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. We need to inform security about this. If they manage to access your personal email, ... double quotes. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication was clear. Our defenses had been compromised. The next morning, we took the email to the Navy's cybersecurity team. They confirmed what we already suspected. My account had been hacked by sophisticated professional. Commander, this is no longer just harassment, the cybersecurity expert said. It's a coordinated operation against you. Whoever is doing this has significant resources. Senator Morrison, I muttered, almost to myself. We can't prove it, Michael reminded me quietly, but it definitely bears his mark. The following days brought more attacks. Anonymous calls to our apartment at all hours. Food deliveries we hadn't ordered. And then, most disturbing, an envelope containing photos of us Michael leaving work, me running in the park near our home, the two of us dining at our favorite restaurant. The photos had no message. They didn't need one. The implication was obvious. We're watching. Despite the escalating intimidation, we continued our work. The investigation against Morrison and his associates was nearly complete, and we were about to present our findings to the Attorney General for approval of formal charges. We're at the finish line, I told my team during our final briefing. We're not backing down now. That's when I received an urgent message from Admiral Hernandez, summoning me to his office immediately. When I arrived, I found not only the Admiral, but also the Chief of Naval Operations, the same officer who had helped reinstate my marriage license almost 2 years earlier. Lieutenant Commander Morgan Bennett, Admiral Hernandez, began formally, his expression grim. We have critical intelligence we need to share with you. The Chief of Operations spoke. We intercepted communications indicating a credible threat against you and your husband. A contract has been established with a group that has a history of violence against federal officers. I felt my body go cold. A contract? You're saying someone hired professional killers? The communications were encrypted, but yes, that's our interpretation, he confirmed. Given the nature of the threat, we're moving you and your husband to a secure location until we can neutralize the threat. Transfer to where, sir? This is classified even at this level. Only a small circle of trusted officers will know your location. What about the research? We're about to present our findings. Admiral Hernandez intervened. Your work is complete, Commander. Your report is exhaustive and convincing. We will take it from here. With all due respect, sir, I initiated this investigation. I need to see it through to the end. The two officers exchanged glances. It was the Chief of Operations who spoke. Alexandra, he said, using my first name in a rare display of familiarity. I understand your dedication, but this is not a time for heroism. It is a time for clever tactics. Morrison and his associates are desperate. They realize they are cornered, and desperate people are unpredictable. The Attorney General has already been informed, Admiral Hernandez added. Charges will be filed within 72 hours, with or without your physical presence. Your safety and that of your husband are the priority now. Part of me wanted to protest, to insist that I wouldn't be intimidated. But another part, the part that had promised Michael we'd be cautious, recognized the wisdom of his words. Has Michael been informed yet? I finally asked. Yes. Diplomatic Protection Service agents are with him now. You will be gathered at the extraction point. When do we leave? Immediately. A car is waiting. 3 hours later, I was on an unmarked military plane with Michael, flying to an unknown destination. Neither of us said much during the flight, both processing how quickly our situation had escalated. I never thought doing our job would make us targets for assassins, I finally vented, looking out the small window at the ocean below. Michael covered my hand with his. You exposed corruption at the highest level of the American government, Alec. Unfortunately, that has consequences. Are you scared? I asked, allowing my vulnerability to show as it rarely did. Yes, he admitted honestly, but I don't regret anything. What we're doing is right. I shook his hand. Yes, it is. Our safe location turned out to be a small naval installation on a remote island in the Pacific, officially listed as a meteorological research station, but in reality, a staging post for intelligence operations. We were the only guests, with a skeleton crew of security and support personnel. The next 3 days were surreally peaceful compared to the chaos of the previous week. No emails, no calls, no constant pressure of the investigation. Just the two of us, the ocean, and the waiting. On the morning of the 3rd day, we received the news. Charges had been formally filed against Senator Morrison and 11 other individuals, including 2 congressmen, a deputy secretary of defense, and several high-profile military contractors. The operation to arrest the suspects was underway. Is it really over? I asked the communications officer who brought the news. Not completely, Commander, but the most dangerous phase did. The element of surprise worked. All key targets were stopped simultaneously before they could react or destroy evidence. Michael. And I watched the news coverage a few hours later, seeing Morrison being escorted out of his office in handcuffs, the powerful committee chairman now reduced to just another corrupt politician caught red-handed. Your work made this happen, Michael said, his arm around my shoulders. Our work, I corrected. It wouldn't have come to charges without you. The next morning, we were cleared to return to the mainland. The immediate risk had passed, though we were informed that security measures would remain in place for the foreseeable future. When our plane landed in Washington, we were greeted not only by a secure, but also by the Attorney General himself, Lieutenant Commander Morgan Bennett. Mr. Bennett, he greeted, shaking our hands. On behalf of the Department of Justice and, frankly, the American people, I want to personally thank you for your exceptional service and courage. We were only doing our duty, sir, I replied automatically. He smiled. Your sense of duty far exceeds that of most, Commander. What you've faced, what you've both faced, goes far beyond what anyone should expect in the line of duty. An official car took us back to our apartment, which had been thoroughly checked and secured. It felt surprisingly normal, as if the tumultuous events of the past few weeks had been but a distant dream. What happens now? I asked Michael as we unpacked our small suit. He thought for a moment. Trials, testimonies, probably a few more months of chaos before everything calms down. And after that? Michael smiled. That smile that still made my heart skip a beat even after all these years. After this, Commander Morgan Bennett, I think we deserve that normalcy you mentioned. Maybe even a real vacation this. A vacation sounds wonderful. I paused, gathering the courage to share the thought that had been on my mind during our quiet days on the island. And maybe when this is all over, we could consider starting a family? Michael's face lit up with a joy I rarely saw, even in our happiest moments. Really? I nodded, suddenly emotional. This whole situation has made me realize we're fighting for a better, more just world. Maybe we should also think about who will inherit this world after us. Michael pulled me into a tight hug. I think you'd be an amazing mother, Alec. Strong, fair, compassionate, and you would be a wonderful father, I replied, burying my face in his chest. Patient, loving, and always willing to fight for what's right. That night, lying in our own bed for the first time in weeks, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us here. From having my marriage license revoked by a corrupt admiral to dismantling a high-level corruption conspiracy that extended all the way to Congress. You know, I murmured, already half asleep when I joined. The Navy, I never imagined it would end up like this. How did you figure it out? Michael asked softly. Honestly, I thought I'd command a ship someday. Maybe become an admiral eventually. The girl from Maine who conquered the ocean. And instead, I found something more important than personal ambition. I found a higher purpose, and I found you. Michael kissed my forehead gently. Sounds like a much better fate, if you ask me. Much better, I agreed, closing my eyes as I fell asleep in my husband's arms. I thought about the words we had exchanged in our wedding vows. So many people had tried to keep us from exchanging. We had promised to face together whatever life brought, through the joys and the storms. Little did we know then how literal those storms would be. But we survived. More than that, we prevailed. And while the future would certainly bring new challenges, we would face each of them together with the same determination and integrity that brought us this far. Because in the end, that's what I've discovered through this entire journey. When you stay true to your principles and the people you love, even attempts to destroy you can end up revealing your greatest strength.